substantive conversation occurs at levels 2 and 1, but many of us simply hang out at levels 5 and 4.
On a deeper level, one, I have a tendency to be busy. That's like level 4,
Yes.
right, in the convo. Level 1,
Yeah.
because I experienced rejection a lot growing up, I tend to want to be busy to prove my worth. That's level 1.
Yeah. This is James Rasool, a.k.a. Trig, and let me welcome you to the Corling Solutions Show. Let's just start with the why. Why this book, The Whole Man?
Couple reasons. I mean, one, we see so much chatter and toxic conversations on podcasts about manhood, right? You know, you see stuff like, oh, well, you got to be a high value man, and all of these conversations that tend to, just really lean on very carnal perceptions, how much I make, how attractive I am to women, how much conquest I can have, like all of that type of stuff, alpha, beta, sigma, all that. And we saw it was really important to go back to the word and say, what does this have to tell us? Because, and I remember, Eric Mason, shout out to Pastor E, who wrote Biblical Manhood, or Manhood Restored, which was a great book. And in that book, he talked about how Jesus is the ideal man. And if Jesus is the ideal man, then shouldn't we model our picture of manhood based off of him and not just on the culture?
Yes.
And so we wanted to highlight that and so one of the things that we see Jesus talk about when he's asked, what is the greatest commandment? He says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and with all your strength.
Yeah.
And we decided to use that as our framework to say, since that is the greatest, that's the top number one thing. What does it look like for us as men to lean into each of those 4 categories in a specific way to help us all grow? And to create a communal experience for us to grow as well. So that's why we created the book. But then when we created the book, we realized we needed videos and discussion guides to go with it. So we weren't just doing this isolated and alone.
This is a construct, man, because the 4 sections of the book and the intros to them alone are enough to make you kind of go, oh, okay, we're about to get into something. You know what I mean? And so when you say we, that's the one thing, obviously, that you brought a number of people together. But what was the thing that, I guess, stirred up the desire to do this?
I think it was a combination of seeing we needed to push back on the darkness with light. Not just criticizing what's out there, but also giving people a vision for what real wholeness look like. And that word whole man is very intentional, because we have a lot of brokenness as in our definitions of manhood, in ourselves, in our communities. And so we wanted to offer something for that. And we wanted to do it, but I felt like the process needed to reflect the very message that we were trying to give. So I couldn't just sit there by myself and create it. So I wanted it to be as collaborative as possible. And so we got about 20 different authors that contribute to this devotional book. And then I linked up with 2 other men who were doing great work in those spaces to help. One, his name is Dr. Malik Blade. He's a counselor, and he created a whole organization called Whole Brother Mission, which is dedicated to helping Black men destigmatize mental health issues, right? And get counseling and things like that. And so for Head, we focus, and he led the charge to kind of think about what does it look like for us to bring our minds and even some of our need for right thinking to God, and sometimes and our awareness that sometimes we need help to get there. With Pastor Jerome Gay, he's written a lot and really is very connected with the heart, and as a pastor shepherding people, and so we had him spearhead the conversation in the video about just relationships. As men, we often try to be lone rangers, or we try to be like, yo, if somebody hurt me, you get one time. I'm putting it on lock. And so for me, living in New York City and thinking a lot about vocation, I ended up leading the charge on Hands, which when the Hands, we focused on what we do with our bodies, right? I love the Lord your God with your strength. So what are you doing with your hands? And how do we have a healthy perspective, a holistic perspective to our vocation, where we don't make it our identity, right? The first thing we ask men, like, what do you do, right? We don't make it our identity, but we also see God's hand in what we are to do, because the first thing God did give Adam was a job to say, go and, tend this garden, fill the earth, be fruitful, multiply.
Right.
And so we do have work to do, and that work is consecrated and sacred, regardless of what it is. But that doesn't define who we are. And so we got to hold those things together. Yeah. And then the soul is the aspect of just our wrestling with God. And we wanted to normalize the fact that sometimes it'd be hard out here in the streets, walking with Jesus. And so that's the kind of soul component. And so we put all those 4 components together.
The book is real, man. All right, I'm going to break my rule. I'm going to change one thing real quick. Hold on.
Yep.
Set the rule and I break it.
That's all right.
Okay, so one of the things, man, that I really enjoyed about the intro of the book, and by the way, I'm holding up the book so y'all can go get this piece. It's available on Amazon or wherever you like to get your books. You can get the the softback physical version. Brother like me likes to take notes. Some of y'all want that Kindle version so you can do it on your iPad. I have both. Okay, so contribute to the cause. One of the things I appreciate in the beginning of the book you talked about was like the story that helped you see the kind of the tale we had always known was debunked in mass.
Yeah.
Right. And it was so funny when I read that part of the book was I had the same thing. So you talked about the 30 for 30 series and seeing NFL players, cats that we saw run up and down the field. And we would go, man, they're getting that $1 million check every week or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's 100,000, whatever. That was what we thought. Like growing up in the hood, you wanted to play Pop Warner football. Excuse me, and you hope that led to high school football. And even though you knew the pyramid was so thin at the top, right? You just felt like, I'm going to be that guy, or my boy Ricky's going to be that guy, and then we all go, right? And so if you saw someone who went, even they were remotely near you, three people removed, it was like, that's a win.
Yes.
Everyone
won.
They
made it.
They made it. So then to see people come out and say, I'm broke, and I'm gonna go really personal with you. So back in 2010, I'm working at Allstate, and somehow I wound up meeting DeMaurice Smith, who was the head of the NFL Players Association. So we start talking about some kind of partnership between Allstate and them. And he said, well, as we try to work this out, come on out to an NFL gathering we're having in California. Bring you, your sales guy, whatever. So I go, he's like, bring your son. I took my son who was, wanting to play college football. And I said, well, D, I don't understand what I would be doing there. He says, I am trying to do 2 things. He says, I'm trying to help them see a guy like you who's making it in business, because they don't see many like you in those kind of roles as a president of a business unit at Allstate or whatever the case may be. And I'm trying to give you the opportunity to kind of plant entrepreneurial roots, meaning like, I said, you mean like have them open an Allstate agency? He said, yeah, like. And I said, well, that would be brilliant while they have a namesake. So I said, but why me? He said, listen, man, let me walk you down. He said, that deal we negotiated with the NFL a few years ago with Tagliabue? He said, $10 billion coming in the players' pockets. He says, it all goes right out. He said, most of the teams, he said, let's start here. Most of the teams give them a check every week. They make them come down to the field house, come into the owner's office and write them a check, because they want to look them in their eyes and reaffirm that this is coming from me to you. He said, just think about that. He said, by the way, think about the combine experience of almost like, let's just be honest, almost like a cattle-like process of inspecting you.
Yes.
Right? He said, so a lot of the framing is a non-empowering framing, right? So he's telling me this. He said, so then imagine you getting a check. Let's say you get a $100,000 check. He said, it's amazing. There always seems to be a high-end check cashing place within a few miles of the stadium. Always seems to be. And they will stop by and cash their check. He said, so they take 2% or whatever that is, 3%. So now the $100,000, $97,000. He said, there's always happens to be a high-end gentleman's club not too far from the check cashing place. So they stop by there, and they popping bottles and da-da-da-da. He said, by the time that guy gets home, that check is cut sometimes in half. Then he remembers, or the agent reminds him of the agent fee and the house and the cars and he said, and then they're broke to next week. He says, so I'm trying to figure out how to stop this going out that way, right? And give them a new vision. And so I was so sober after that.
Yeah, that's real.
So we fly out there and we're talking to different players and whatnot. There wasn't much take up. I remember talking like Reed Dowdy. Remember the wide receiver who played for the Raiders, had that long name, Ostapasanus or something like that? Yeah. You're just talking to different people and they're like, I can't see it. I'm like, you have a namesake. Like, right? If you open the agency this Saturday and said you would be there, do you know how many people would show up?
Right.
Just
to meet you.
Just to meet you. And it's not, listen, it's not discretionary. You have to have insurance. So like, do it. So when I read you talking about that and debunking that myth of what we all believed, it hit me hard. And then it made me think about what I was experiencing as I read the book. And I'll tell you that I'm curious to hear what other feedback has been, but I'll tell you mine. A lot of times when you do devotionals and read things, I liken it to like trying something on, but you're trying it on and then you're looking in this really wide mirror.
Yeah.
So you see so many things, like you see yourself,
right?
But you see so many other things. This was like a right size mirror that sharpened your focus of seeing yourself, right? Because of the nuances of the black male experience, and because of how you're delivering it, it went from something that could appeal to so many to something that was giving me body blows.
Yeah. That's so dope to hear because in all of that, when I watched Broke from 30 for 30, it was shocking because, like you said, look, growing up in the hood, either, making it in music, being a rapper, or being an athlete.
Absolutely.
That was like what the few 1% could do to make it. And so to see the dudes that made it and see 60% were broke within 4 years of finishing their careers. And those careers, the average length of the career is 3.5 years.
Right.
It was shocking.
Right.
And what it revealed is, and that's the pinnacle. Those are the top. That's like the folks that made it in spite of the lightning strike. Right. What does it say about the rest of us who are just struggling to get by?
Right.
And the other thing that was surprising in the series was how reluctant people were to talk about it. Out of the 100 people they talked to, if you look through the credits, they talked to all these people. Only a few of them were willing to go on camera because they were embarrassed.
That's right.
And that reminded me of how we do as men as well.
That's right.
When we do have shortcomings, when we do hit snags, we get embarrassed, and so we hide.
That's right.
But then because we hide, it keeps the cycle going, so everybody's experiencing that thing anew for the first time.
That's right.
So we wanted to really create a context where we could be vulnerable and say, yo, you're not the only one. You've not been there by yourself.
Yes.
These are things that we all struggle with, but we also want to make it plain that we are speaking from the same experiences, right? And so it's a book that any man, any person could benefit from.
Absolutely.
But we did very intentionally want to ground it in a certain experience that people could see themselves.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes we're in a state right now, let's be honest, culturally, where just watching the pullback on DEI programs, just watching the destruct of ESG and what that was originally intended to do and hold companies accountable for different things, watching all those things get unraveled and the overarching tone almost of differentiation doesn't matter.
Right.
We're all in this together is so destructive.
Right.
And so I want to remind folks that it's okay to acknowledge differences. As a matter of fact, it's better than okay. It's respectful.
Yeah.
Right?
It's biblical.
It's biblical.
Here's the thing that is so interesting. We read a text, and when we read the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, that is very contextual.
Yes.
And we go in and look at, okay, so what did it mean when Jesus talked about the Jericho road? Well, you have to understand the context because this was a road that was very dangerous and then people would kind of go through. And then what did it mean that it was a Samaritan?
Right.
Oh, well, you have to understand the ethnic tensions that existed between Jews and Samaritans in order to get the story. We love to jump into those contexts.
Absolutely.
So what that means is that God chose to be specific, to use a certain group, an ethnic group of people, with their own food choices, their own idiosyncrasies, their own things, to make a message universal to the world.
Yes.
And so that what that means is we can all benefit from hearing the stories and conversations of a particular ethnic group, and God doesn't shy away from that. and in order for us to learn more about who God is. And I think that we have to hold that together when we think about our faith, God doesn't run away from our cultural uniquenesses. He made us on purpose.
And it makes the story that much more rich and impactful.
Right.
It's like when you knew Paul and where Paul comes from and what he theoretically gave up, right? It just makes it that much more significant.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you understand, okay, he was a Pharisee.
Right.
And now you take a Pharisee who he calls the Pharisee of Pharisees, who was against the church, precisely because they had opened up the gospel and the community to Gentiles. And you make that guy the guy who's the apostle to the Gentiles, the guy who is being the primary spokesperson for, God's salvation is love for everybody. You don't get to appreciate fully what that means unless you understand the cultural context of who he is.
One of the things about the book is it's a journey, and I don't want to give too much away. I need y'all to go get the book. But as an example, day 2, one of the questions that Deron Washington asked was, what he says is, we have mastered the art of functioning while feeling lost. And I had to sit with that for a minute. Like, yes, how did I get there? Well, but some of it's justified. But still, is it right? I literally, this is the part for me where I started reading it during vacation. We were celebrating our 26th anniversary. So
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And I made a pledge, like, no electronics. I cut off all my electronics on day 2, no social, no anything. By the way, I will say to people, I'm not saying you need to do this. I deleted my social apps from my phone in October during vacation. I have not added them back. So if I want to go to social, it's really, I must be wanting to do something and go on my laptop.
And that's saying something for Holy Culture Radio guy.
Thank God for a team. Right? But yeah, exactly. I'm not on social on my phone anymore. And it's giving me time back. And the thing this made me think about was, wait a minute. In a corporate environment, there was a need not to show emotion. There was a need, just being real, as a Black professional, to deliver 110%. Right. There was a need to debunk what they assumed would come from a Black professional.
Yeah.
Right? I remember an executive one day saying to me, it's amazing how you sit through all that sometime and you're like what'd she say? You're like a black kettle pot. Like, I know you're probably brewing inside, but you're cool to the touch. Like, you never, no matter what they do, you never let it get to you. In my mind, I'm saying, because if I did, what happens after that?
Yeah, it's all.
There's no grace.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you sharing that, and that is the context. And specifically, when you talk about that, man, we also got to talk about the video series because it amplifies these conversations even more.
Right.
In particular, that same thread that you just pulled on in the heart conversation that Pastor Jerome Gay leads with Dr. Eric Mason and James White, Pastor James White.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't heard of Pastor James White, that was the man that when he preached a message at the Impact Conference in 1998, that's when Lecrae came to faith.
Gotcha.
That's when Shokut Baraka came to faith. It was one of the most iconic messages. He just preached the gospel, the cross, and it was like, it shut the whole place down. Like, it was so powerful. So, in any case, he's talking to these men about why is it that as Black men and men that we have a hard time with being vulnerable and open up emotionally. And they start talking about how their dads grew up in the South and just the different things that they experienced, the dangers, the violence that caused them to create an atmosphere that they had to be hard on the external.
Right.
And so then when you now talk about the value of vulnerability, that's hard to kind of grasp. And so they've had to unlearn some things, but also be more gracious to their fathers, understanding what they came out of. And those are those real conversations when you realize that, for us to be discipled and sanctified, it takes us to look back at what was it that I needed to have as a defense mechanism, as a survival tactic, that I now need to bring to the foot of the cross and have me deconstruct so I can be a whole man.
Yes.
And that's in a very important conversation, because it's not that we're saying that this was unjustified.
Right.
But in the same thing, growing up different in the hood, right? Being more sensitive. Like, I remember shutting down those tears because I was like, that made me a target. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But then when you become a husband, a father, when you become somebody that you need to access emotional vulnerability, you better be able to reconnect with those things
exactly
in order to be whole.
Right. And what you said makes me think of something. It's difficult to show empathy to others if you won't show empathy through yourself.
Facts.
Like, how can you hug someone else and not hug yourself? How can you cry for someone else and not let your burden release those tears? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so as you go through this, I think it debunks so many things. Like on day 3, man, this was good. Not that you didn't know it, but the way he set it up when he talks about the 3 devastating lies that we can believe sometimes. God does not care, God is absent, and God will not intervene. And the ramifications of believing those lies, man. Like, what have you heard feedback-wise from people as they've been digesting?
A few things. And we've done events where we have done men's, like our church and shout out Bridge Church in Brooklyn. We've done our men's times using the book. I've gone all over the country, really, doing these. And so I think the thing that I've heard was just the value of what it meant to recognize, like, I can be real about mental health and seeing that as a part of my faith, which I didn't even, there was never a space to have that conversation before. B, the aspect of, of being vulnerable and honest, but at the same time, realizing that that's not taking away from my manhood. That's not taking away from my strength. That I can hold both of these things together at the same time. And then the third thing, C, I guess, is the value and beauty of community. Like, the funny thing is, man, women will get together, have a women's time, go deep on the on the drop of a hat. Brothers will stay on the, yo, you see that game? You know what I mean? What's going on with this?
Bruh,
like
that part of the book right there.
Oh yeah, when Malik talks about the pyramid,
the levels. Can I read? Can I read a piece of that, man? From the levels, bro. I just want to read this piece because to me it's almost like, would you jump off a mountain without the parachute?
No.
Right? Would you jump in the boat without the life vest? We will forsake those things because they're represented in community, but we'll walk away from it. He says, look. I love this part. Each of us is free to define deep friendship differently, but Proverbs 17:17 singles out brothers in their role. It doesn't frame a brother as someone to simply shoot the breeze with, but rather someone born for adversity. And he jumps ahead to talk about these levels, and he says, we will, substantive conversation occurs at levels 2 and 1, but many of us simply hang out at levels 5 and 4. And this example is brilliant. Level 5, how are you? Your brother says the cliche, I'm chilling, or I'm good, or I'm chilling. Level 4, who won the Super Bowl in 2019? Your brother, the Patriots won. Level 3, the Patriots will have a hard time finding a suitable replacement for Tom Brady. Now, this is where he says we need to be. Level 2, I bet on the game, and I'm worried I'll lose my money. Okay. Level 1, I have a gambling problem and need some help before it gets worse. Brother, women, when they say I need to get together. I need to get the prayer warriors together. And
they go to level 1
right there,
like immediately.
Yes.
We will stay at level 5 and 4 for days,
hanging out,
weeks.
Hope you don't ask. Just keep it moving.
And I think that awareness that there's a difference between conversation and true vulnerability and transparency. But that's where the healing is.
Right.
I mean, I think about in my own life that it wasn't until I began to share my struggles, my fears, that with other men, that I was able to be lifted up. Bro, you're not alone. Like, you can make it through this. I've been through that too. This is how I made it. You know what I mean? Those are the things that help bring life. And now that's when you're really getting to really transformation. And so I think that's what we want to do with the book, with the video series. And also, there's a song and a video that goes with it too.
Yeah, we'll play that at the end of this, the Show Baraka song. We'll play that towards the end. But for brothers who, buy into the book, they start to get involved in the video series and whatnot, but then get to that point where they say, well, I don't have a collective to turn to. And they ask you, what is your advice to them?
That's real. One of the things, the statistics that we quote is that the number of men who identify as not having close friends has quintupled
Yeah.
in the last 30 years.
Mm.
And so that is real. I remember this one thing that I remember being told, like, that the first step of having a friend is you have to be a friend.
Mm.
And what that means, I think, in this conversation is I have to really look at my life and go, where are the places where I have not made margin for relational context?
Mm.
And how do I create space?
Yeah.
So that I'm not just jumping from meeting to meeting, from grind to grind,
That's good.
from responsibility to responsibility, but I'm actually, and you talked about, earlier, this aspect of reflection, like the time that you spent away from the phone, away from social media. That is a key part of it. Mm-hmm. Like, we first don't even know ourselves. We got to be friends with ourselves.
Absolutely.
We talk about being, getting ourselves a hug.
Absolutely.
For me, that looks like journaling, right? And it's hard sometimes, and it's a discipline that I've had to do. And I don't, it was funny. I mentioned I was in a therapy session a few weeks ago, and one of the action points was to write a journal. And then I had my next one, like, 30 minutes before, I'm like writing so I can actually have something to do. But it was still helpful to me.
Absolutely.
The fact that I had reflected on the previous year, because usually I do a year in review.
Yes.
Where at the end of the year, I think about month to month, and I go back in my calendar.
Yeah.
And I go, what happened during that? And it helps me to get a theme and a perspective of what I did Absolutely. And what I didn't do. One for me, and again, just keeping it a buck.
Yeah.
It was the fact that I traveled way too much last year for all the things I were doing. And I looked at it, and it got to a point where I was like, at first I loved it and enjoyed it, but then it went overkill. It was kind of like eating too much, where it's like, oh, nah, this is too much. And so now I'm looking for, in 2025, not traveling as much so that I can have more margin for friendship.
That's good.
The second part of that is, once you create space and once you create some moment to reflect, then you can start to go, what do I need? What do I want out of relationships? Who is there around me?
Right.
And then you can start to maybe form and develop that. And then third, the beautiful thing about the technological age in which we live in is they don't even have to be physically close anymore. Like, I've had friendships that we've developed 20 years ago that we still Zoom, we still, face video chat, and then we can just say, hey, once a year, I'm gonna fly out.
Right.
Once a year, we're gonna come and hang out together, and that'll be what our goal and our rhythm is.
Yes.
And so I think there are ways to cultivate and develop that type of bond and connection. But the first to be that person, maybe you organize a whole man, event. And you do so like, yo, I want to help develop this type of community.
That's good.
And so you become the person that kind of cultivates the very thing that you're looking for.
That's good, man. That part of creating margin, how difficult was it for you?
Man, I like to go.
Yeah.
And then on a deeper level, so one, I have a tendency to be busy. That's like level 4, right, in the convo. Level 1, because I experienced rejection a lot growing up, I tend to want to be busy to prove my worth. That's level 1.
Yeah.
And so what I realized I had to do was deconstruct the fact that I don't have to say yes to every opportunity in order to somehow stay on this hamster wheel of saying, like, see, I'm good. I'm good because God says I'm good.
Yeah.
And so on the deepest level, it was not just a strategic thing. It wasn't just a calendaring issue. As much as we want to stay on that level, it was on a how do I see myself level.
Bro, that's so good.
And accepting the fact that I don't need to be out there because and that's because that's what really be getting in your head. You be seeing on social media the comparison trap. Yo, look at this person. They just put out a book. They're blowing up on this spot. Nobody knows who I am.
Right.
Like, that stuff can kind of create this energy in you to fill your life up with work.
Yeah.
When inside you have no relational connections,
man.
And so that's foundationally, I had to paradigm shift to go. Part of the thing is I'm chasing the wrong thing.
Yeah. No, that's so good, and we have a similarity. We're similar. Level 1, I think I'm just saying it differently. Is I've all through my life been a validation seeker because I felt. Same thing, rejection, my pop, so on and so forth. So always proving through work, right, that I'm good enough, right? And so similar to you, I remember taking things consciously off my plate And I remember even as recent as 3 weeks ago saying to my wife one night, like, I don't have anything I have to do tonight. And then the next night, I don't have anything I have to do. And then the weekend, I don't have anything, like, I'm not busy. And she's like, yeah, it's okay, right? And I had to continue to tell myself, it's okay.
And isn't that funny how our wives often can see us and our family can see us more than we can see ourselves?
No doubt about it.
And we'll just ignore it.
No doubt about
it. They just,
exactly.
They always want me to rest because they just not on their grind like me. And we come up with these different...
Bro, the grind is a word we need to bury. You know what I mean? It's like the right answer. I'm grinding.
Right.
What? I mean,
yeah,
that's a level 4, level 5, right?
Yep.
I'm grinding.
Right.
Like, what's really happening?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm overworking to compensate for some inadequacies that I feel in myself, and I'm filling that up.
Right.
Instead of being still and knowing that He is God, instead of filling myself with the sense of peace, reflection, solitude, that then allows me to show up in relationships as a whole person and be fully present and able to then impart something to the next generation that goes beyond just here's my resume, but here is actually my life that I can impart to you in a very thoughtful and reflective way because I've done that work with myself. That's what wholeness looks like. Like, so many times, this is part of the issue why we have this intergenerational dynamic. Mm-hmm. You see it play itself out in sports sometimes, where the old heads don't want to give it up to the new guys.
Right.
And part of that is because their whole validation was based on that record. So if that record goes away,
that's right.
That running, rushing yard record goes away, that something then people are going to forget who I am.
That's right.
As opposed to a scenario, if I was an athlete and my son was coming up on my record, I want him to break that record because I want better for them than I want for me. How do we develop that kind of relationship from one generation to the next?
Right.
That is what it looks like to first be okay with the fact that record didn't make me. I appreciate it and I celebrate it what the record did and my accomplishment. But what I want for the next generation is even more than what I want for me. And you can only do that from a place of wholeness, not brokenness.
Well, yeah, and just to probe deeper on that, man, given what you do as a pastor and whatnot, isn't a part of some of the yin and the yang here, and the challenge is that as Christians, on the one hand, we want to say it's all for His glory, but we still get caught up in the accolades, the achievements, and everything else. How do we reconcile that? Because I think I know for me, it's a challenge, right? Every now and then, it's like, oh, and then no, it's for His glory. Like, this is not mine. I'm in a chair for a minute. There will be another CEO of Holy Culture. There will be someone else who takes over the nonprofit and runs it. I should be making this seat better for that person.
Man, the reality is oftentimes we just baptize the same worldly ambition that exists in the world, exists in Christian spaces. We just put the kingdom on top of it. And I'm speaking from myself.
Yeah.
That what's really, and it's a mixed motivation. Right. You know what I mean? And so part of that is consecrate and purify my heart so that I can distinguish and set apart the fact that, part of my motivation for doing this is I want to blow up.
Yeah.
I want people to know who my name is, not just who Jesus's name is. Yeah. But, I'm doing it for Jesus.
I'm doing it so I can share Jesus more, right? Like, if I blow up, Jesus blows up, right?
Exactly. And I think that it goes back to He don't need you.
Right.
And also we go back to this, and several authors mention this, at the baptism of Jesus. Before He does anything in His earthly ministry, He hears a voice from the Father that says, "Behold, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." Prior to Jesus's works, prior to His healings, prior to His teaching, He was already well pleased with Him. And we have to get back to sit with in a culture that, and this gets deep. We talk about this in the video on hands,
right,
bro, especially in the Black male context. In a culture in which you were literally valued by the work that you do, going back to slavery, you were literally assessed numeric and monetary value based on your work.
Right.
What does it mean to actually sit with the fact that I am more than what I do?
Right.
That is even a struggle that I think has cultural and historical implications for us. But when you get down to the basic strip down everything else, there's a reality that says, this is my Son in whom I'm well pleased.
Yeah.
And I sit with that sense of contentment and that sense of delight. And then from there, I can serve from the overflow. And that means if the opportunity comes or if it goes, it is well with my soul.
Yeah. There's so much in that. And one of the things I love about the book is that you deal with practical application. Because the mental picture I have when you talk about that is right now, that is almost the equivalent of one of us jumping on a plane and landing in Japan. And we don't speak a lick of Japanese, and they don't speak a lick of English.
Right.
You land in that town,
Right.
and then trying to yell, "Jesus is Lord," and they're looking at you.
Yeah.
That is the disassociation with where you are as a Christian in those moments sometimes where everything else is not congruent to that line of thinking. Right. As soon as you turn left, accomplishment. As soon as you turn right, opportunity to get to an accomplishment. As soon as you turn to the next thing, training to do this, right? Oh, you're not making enough money? Do this, right? Oh, you're not.
Yeah.
You need to have 7 jobs. You need to do Uber. You need to do, right? You need to get the bag.
Yeah. You need to be a high value man.
You need to be a high value man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And you know, when sisters start posting them videos, you know, I'm on a date, he didn't want to pay for the date, right? You're not showing up right.
Right.
You
Yeah.
watch some of the
He
videos.
took me to Cheesecake Factory.
Right? And so the practical application that is given with each of the devotionals, how did that structure come to be?
Yeah, well, you know, Our Daily Bread Ministries is known for we do devotionals and devotional books for decades. Literally. Started in 1938. And so we have a great team of editors that have, you know, walked with us to kind of create some of that structure. But we knew we wanted to give people a nugget. And these are not long. We created these 40, it's like 220 words. You can be in and out, get your inspiration for the day, chew on that reflection for a few moments, and then go and look into the application. Okay, this is what I need to do for the day. But yeah, we wanted to create that structure. And Malik, Jerome, and I, you know, put those things in place and keep that consistency going so that there would be a real sense in where this can really get down deep in my soul, not just like 5 minutes and I forgot what I talked about. Or read about.
It's good. It's well put together, man. So, all right, so people need to pick this book up. What's the last thing you would say in terms of if they're not convinced yet, what's your last, you know, piece of advice to tell them, hey, you need to get over the hump and get this? What would you say?
I would say the main thing before we talk about investments and stocks, bonds, whatever you into, invest in yourself.
Yeah.
And the importance of, like Jesus has laid it out, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. That's what it means to. But how do we do that? We're often not told how do we do that. And this book, the video series, the discussion guide, we have a discussion guide. So you don't even have to come up with the questions that you want to reflect on with, like, in terms of the video series. We give that to you as well on our website. And so I would just say invest in yourself. If you know somebody, invest in somebody else, a younger man, a brother, a uncle, a father. This is the type of gift that will keep on giving in their lives.
That's good. That's good, y'all. I tell you what. So with what he said, 2 things. One, we'll get this up on the podcast, the website. I'll make sure y'all pick this up. 2, the couple brothers, man, that I love dearly, and we talk about things when we come together, but, you know, we haven't been able to get together. I'm going to get the book for them, send it to them, and then encourage us to jump on the Zoom and have some conversations after we all go through a little bit. I've gone through it, but I'm going to go through it again with them. I encourage y'all to do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Pick it up. We like to figure out how we hang out with people, how we have a good time. I'm just going to say, brothers, we could have better conversations, and let's strive to get to level 1, level 2. If people want to get in contact with you, bro, what's the best way?
Yeah, you can reach me on my website, rasoolberry.com. For all the resources attached to Whole Man, you go to experiencevoices.org/Whole Man. Experience Voices, or you can just go to experiencevoices.org, and then you can find the Whole Man in the tab, but /Whole Man will get you there. And yeah, man, it's on Right Now Media. You know, we put this on the Pando app, so they're brothers. In Pando is for those who are inmates who are incarcerated. They don't get access to internet. We put that on that app, man. I just did a outreach concert with
Nice.
Lecrae in Jefferson City Correctional Center, and dudes were coming up to me like, "Yo, man, whole man, bless me."
That's good.
So it's getting out there in a lot of different ways.
That's good, brother. Well, thanks for coming, man. And y'all heard it here. You know what I'm going to say. Be informed, be empowered, be accountable, y'all. Blessings.